our Saturday lecture series, and I welcome you here. I'm so excited we have so many people joining us, and this will be a continued virtual series twice a month, continue as long as we can sustain, and we welcome different speakers for every week. Today, our speaker is a third-generation Chinese in San Diego. He is the president of House of China in Balboa Park, which was established in 1935. After this COVID-19 shutdown, it will reopen and still as before, opens on Saturdays and Sundays. It's still in Balboa Park. He grew up in San Diego and went to the Chinese mission school here. So he has personal knowledge about the mission school and House of China. So it is my pleasure to introduce David Seid as our speaker today for Mission School and House of China. We welcome everybody else to chime in when he gets to somewhere you feel like you have more story you want to add. That's very welcome. So David, take away.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to share some stories. So I was born in 1950, and I guess you could say I was born into the Chinese Community Church as well as the Hall of China, House of China. My mother, Pearl Homstead, was also born in San Diego in 1911. My Gong, we believe, was in San Diego by 1903. So I embarked on the history project to research the Chinese Community Church in 1983, 1984, because the church was going to be celebrating 2 years later its centennial in 1985. So the church had roots with the congregational denomination. So historic records are kept in Boston, so I received permission to gain some access to their records. There's what's called the American Missionary Association and their Amistad Center, and this is in New Orleans, so also access some of their records. And additional records are kept in Berkeley at the Union Theological Library. Of course, I did some correspondence and photos from descendants of the church founders and members. So, of course, the views expressed and the perceptions are, of course, of my own. So we'll turn to the first slide that gives kind of some access to their records. Founding of the school, that I believe in 1867, the Congregationalists actually began work in San Francisco with the Chinese. By 1870, the Congregationalist American Missionary Association formally came to sponsor mission efforts to the Chinese. In 1874, Reverend William Pond became the second superintendent of the Missionary Association, and it authorized local auxiliaries such as the California Chinese Mission, and the Chinese themselves also formed their own association. So you can see the first bullet point talks about the outreach. So they use English as a tool to serve the Chinese, and they use the Bible to also teach Christian
sorry, I'm going to interrupt just again. Please mute your microphone if you're not a speaker. So right now we want just David Seid. So if you can mute your phone, I think your microphone, it will be better. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So in June of 1885, Reverend Pond reported that 2 of the San Francisco Chinese Christians had relocated to San Diego. And there's an August 1885 California Chinese mission report that talked about new missions being started in the state. One was in Alturas, California, the second in Fresno, the third in San Diego, and the last one that year was in Tulare. So one of the San Diego Chinese members was a man named Quan Nui, and that person, along with Li Hong, whose name is on the slide, were some of the early volunteers, both volunteers as well as they could have received the stipend. We can go to the next slide, please. It has a newspaper clipping and some other information. Are you able to go to that slide? Okay, so I'm going to read some of the text in the newspaper article. There are now 20 promising young celestials on the roll of the Chinese mission at 8th, and the average attendance is 11. They learn reading and writing and are taught religious precepts from the Bible in their own language. Especially in the former studies, they are apt. Several quote-unquote boys have recently gone back to the flowery kingdom to disseminate the gospel among their benighted countrymen. So this is from the San Diego Union of December 27, 1886. So some of the terminology like, flowery kingdom, benighted, boys, these days, we would, give second thoughts to those terminologies, but that is how things were in that era. So the picture on the right, the lady in the hat is Margaret Fapton. She was the first Chinese mother at the mission. So they are on the steps of a wooden building, and you can see above them the plate called Chinese Mission School. So I had to double check the location. I believe this is on First Avenue. So they held classes actually 6 nights a week. And the original mission was housed, I believe, by the First Presbyterian Church around 8th and Broadway. And then in 1887, because the Presbyterians needed the space, classes moved to 663 First Avenue. In 1909, a structure was built at 665 First Avenue. There's a census report from 1900 that the Chinese population at that time was 414, and this was throughout the whole county. You've heard the name of Ham Ah Quin. His family in 1903 was associated with the mission. My grandfather was Sun Mao Ham, and he also appeared in the 1903 records as a member of the church. Later on in the early 1880s, you recall there was the Chinese Exclusion Law. And so not only that year, but the subsequent years, there's a lot of havoc in the Chinese community because only like students, diplomats, and merchants could come over to the US. So what I saw in one report was that San Diego, being on the Mexican border, was actually a rendezvous place for Chinese to enter California in contravention of the Exclusion Law. And San Diego thus became a hunting ground for governmental inspectors and detectives. And actually in 1905, when Dr. Pond did an annual in San Diego, he found the mission near death. So, kind of fast forward to today's.
He's muted.
Yeah, sorry. Because there were so many noise. So Davis, please stop for a while. I'm muting everybody and mute you because there was a lot of noise. So now I need to unmute David. Okay, Dave, yeah, okay.
Okay, so let me turn to the mission's early year. As I said a moment ago, in 1905, Dr. Pond reported the mission was nearly at death. There was actually a lot of competition. There were several other mission outreach by, the Presbyterians or the Baptists or other people. So The Chinese mission school flourished due to the dedicated work of the missionaries and the paid native workers and volunteers. And also, there was the advent of American-born Chinese. So female missionaries visited the Chinese women, gaining actually the confidence of the new moms by teaching parenting skills and presenting small gifts. Prior to this time, work was almost exclusively with sojourner men. So I use the word sojourner because so many of the Chinese came to Gumsam or California to mine the gold, work the railroad, gain the wealth, go back to China and the village to build a home and have a nice lifestyle. So most of the men at that time were sojourners, and the early immigrants were only the Chinese. So my parentage on my mother's side are Hoi Ping people, and my father's side, Sun Wui people. But on my father's side, he and his family were in Portland, Oregon. So I was talking about the female missionaries outreaching to the Chinese mother. So in June 1911, a missionary by the name of Ada Youngman wrote a congratulations to Mrs. Thompson Mouth, my poo-poo, on the birth of my mother, Pearl Ha, said, well, Pearl's Rose Ha. How glad you must be to have a child to bring up for the Lord. I am told she is a very pretty child. Give my love to Pearl Rose. What a pretty name. So, as I said, the lady in the picture underneath the Chinese mission school is Margaret Fapton. She was the mission superintendent from 1911 to 1919. She continued far beyond as a paid and volunteer worker until her death in 1950. She was the first mission mother. She visited all the families with new babies. Many Chinese named their children in her honor or in honor of Mrs. Fenton's own children. Could we go to the next slide, please? The next picture you're going to see is the interior of the mission school. The Reverend is near the bottom, near the children. He is wearing glasses. So he was the first ordained Chinese leadership of the mission from 1925 to 1928. This photo is dated February 21, 1926. The wooden building was torn down in 1927, and a brick building with 16 dorm rooms was built on the same site. I don't know if anyone wants to guess what the rent was for a dorm room for a month. I know probably you're all muted, but the answer is they paid $5 for the entire month for a dorm room in the building. When the wooden structure was torn down to build brick structure, church activities moved to the CCBA building. So, of course, now when you go to the main building of the museum, you can enjoy the brick building. So I'm going to read someone's reminiscence about the wooden building, and this is from a man named Kenneth Jerr. I remember the wooden frame building was a large house painted in dull green with a wooden fence and gate in front. Inside the small entry door, wooden chairs were arranged in a row. High against the front wall was a picture of Christ with cross American and Chinese flag. So you can see above all the people on the right side is a striped flag. So this was kind of the revolutionary early China flag. The different stripes represented the different main ethnic groups. I think it was like, the Mongols, Tibetans, the Chinese, of course. So I'm going to hold up something. Probably it's almost impossible for you to see. Let me arrange it. So when Dr. Reverend Hong left San Diego, the Chinese presented him with this plaque. Because the early Chinese came from the Toisan area, the name of San Diego in Chinese was then Sanjiegu. It is not, never saw the Singde Na Ga name. So one day, maybe some people can also look at the plaque that I was holding. Why don't we go to the next picture, please? So this is a 1928 picture of the volleyball team. Besides the volleyball team, the mission also in later decades sponsored like a basketball team. And there were church leagues. One of the basketball members, Bob Sue, commented, how successful they were, and they even beat the Asbury boys who were like 6 feet tall compared to the Chinese. So the mission was an important social service center for the Chinese, such as the basketball team, volleyball team. One of the first Chinese schools was held at the mission in 1935. Later on in the 30s, when there was a lot of famine in China, a lot of the China famine relief drives emanated out of the church. When we go to another picture, this is from 1933, and it was a Christmas play. The play was Why the Chimes Rang, the fully costumed people. Next slide, please. And this is a group of ladies all wearing corsages. So we have Mrs. Fapton and another mission mother, Delia Rimbaud, and the ladies celebrating Mother's Day in front of the brick building. Why don't we go to another slide? Because as you can tell, the Chinese community is becoming more and more mature. And so the offsprings of the first generation now are the second, and they became more and more Americanized. So on the left, we have a picture. The bugler is Seid. So he and his family were the co-founders of the Wujichang grocery store. The other boy is Daniel Yi. So this is the certificate, I guess, authorizing the Chinese Community Church to start Troop 101 in San Diego. Why don't we go to the next slide? This is the front of the building in 1938, so you can see the wording on the building. Part of it's cut off, of course. The building was Mission Revival style. The architect was Louis Gill, and his uncle was the famous architect Irving Gill. So this location is at on First Avenue. Then it relocated. I see. Then it talks about when it got relocated down to the current site of the mission. So now we're kind of in a period of self-support and fast forward for the mission. On November 9, 1946, a milestone was realized when the mission became the self-supporting Chinese Congregational Church. Following World War II, there was a baby boom. Church leaders in 1958 began fundraising for a new church campus, and in 1960, the dream was realized with the 1750 47th Street campus. In 2006, the church moved yet again, this time to Tierra Santa. Now the attendees are third, fourth, fifth generation Chinese Americans with other racial groups. Services are in English. With the influx, of course, of Mandarin speakers in the most recent decades, the church has a Friday night Mandarin fellowship as well as Sunday Mandarin Sunday school class. So the Toisan and the Cantonese roots are still honored by the members of the church. So come visit. The church wants to serve the community and share Christ's love. So if some people have some recollections themselves or some questions, I'd be happy to try to answer before we go to our second presentation. So Lily, can you see if anyone has a hand raised and has a question? I can't hear you, Lily. Okay.
Unmuted. So I forgot to tell everybody, if you want to speak, go to participants and then raise your blue hand. I don't see any blue hand.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody raised a hand. Otherwise, maybe toward the end we'll open, let everybody unmute and talk. So okay, thank you. Then let's just continue.
Okay. Well, I'll go to my next topic, House of China. Actually, it began with the English name of Hall of China, but I'll explain that. So here we have the title page, House of China, and I'm going to give a little quote, then we'll start with a few slides. I vividly remember the excitement of the hustle and bustle with the community when everyone was totally involved and committed to make May 25, 1935, an unforgettable day in our lives. This is the remembrance, the reminiscence of Gladys Hom as printed in the 40th anniversary book of the House of China. And by the way, Gladys Hom was my aunt. When we go to the first slide, please. Okay. During the depths of the U.S. Depression, civic visionary Frank Coogan conceived the idea of an international exposition in San Diego to boost morale, to make San Diego a tourist site, and to generate income. In 1933, the exposition committee came to the home of Sun Mao Ham by Gong Gong to request he get CCBA to participate in the exposition. At that time, my Gong Gong was the English secretary of CCBA. So everyone joined in and was there to give money, art treasures, and their talent. Furniture and art goods were donated by San Francisco businessmen, the local Kwanmin gift store, and the Republic of China. So this picture is a picture of the organizing committee of the Hall of China. It is taken in front of the CCBA building, which still stands. So you can see in back of the gentleman in horizontal Chinese is the Zhonghua Wei Gun. So that door, if you walk up, takes you to the second floor. Kind of interesting, as you go to the center of the picture and the building, you can see Zhonghua Hakao, or the Chinese school. To the left of that, it says San Diego College. So it was some kind of fraternal social organization. Amongst the people in the picture, if you look at the front row starting from the right, the balding man, that's my grandfather, Sun Mao Han. In back, the two kind of tallest young men are my uncles, Ernest and Freeman, who would have kind of major speaking roles at some of the dedication ceremonies, as of course he was a native English speaker. Can see some other names. So at some point the Historic Museum is going to be doing a program on Chinese schools, and John Lee Wong, who was speaker last week on launching, is the lead on that. We also are thinking of doing a study of Chinese restaurants, and there was a picture of George Zhou for the Chinese Village restaurant. So let me go back to the actual exposition and the opening. So May 25, 1935 was the ribbon cutting ceremony to open the cottage in Balboa Park. Community leaders, China Council, fireworks from San Francisco, and a 50-member all-girl marching team were highlights of the ceremony. If Do we have the next picture? This is the document from the China consulate in San Francisco. It names my uncle Ernest to spearhead the event. My grandfather was a pretty patriotic individual, and so for all the boys, their Chinese names talk about, like country love, country freedom, country democracy. So it has like Tanguo, is titled there. So there were newspaper reports about the China Day of October 13, 1935. If we could go to the next slide, it probably contains information. So the top picture, that is Philip Hom. He's leading a marching band from Chinatown up Park Boulevard to the Oregon Pavilion. The band members, I surmise, were not local. The picture to the left are a contingent of ladies from LA. The bottom picture, you can see the stage of the Oregon Pavilion filled with dignitaries. The tall man up front at the microphone is my uncle. On the right in Chinese is a ribbon that I guess the dignitaries were given to wear. So it says in English, China Day, California Pacific International Exposition, San Diego, Cal, October 13, 1935. So again, the marching band paraded from Chinatown to Balboa Park. Beautiful Chinese girls dressed in the latest fashion, smoking cigarettes, wearing paint and powder came from San Francisco. A Chinese aviatrix and Hollywood starlet graced the celebration. China consular officials and local leaders talked about lasting friendship. Again, remember, in 1935, there were already disputes, I guess, in Europe and Asia. The evening's event was capped by a grand fireworks display. So, as I was saying, this is the eve of the Sino-Japan War and World War II. So now we're kind of in a period of strife. So despite hopes for peace, World War II broke out. All Americans joined in the war effort. As a consequence, all cottages relinquished their buildings to the U.S. Navy in 1942. Naval officers were billeted within the cottages, and the grounds were off limits to the public. It was not until August 1st, 1948, that the House of China gained back the cottage. So war-weary China continued to have fighting between the nationalist Kuomintang government and the communists led by Mao Zedong. So we have the next slide. So this is the picture in the 1950s. At that time, Edwin Hom and his family were leaders in the Hall of China. So he took a personal interest in assisting visiting nationalist naval personnel. So the picture on the left, I guess maybe the naval personnel presented some kind of banner to the delegation. On the right, you could see a couple of the sailors hauling some boxes of donated items or whatever items onto the nationalist ship. So the House of Pacific Relations, which is the parent body of all the international cottages, was modeled after the United Nations. Many people question whether the House of China represented the nationalists or communists in the 1960s and early 70s. The leadership of the House of China at that time made the decision that the House of China would present, promote, and preserve Chinese culture and friendship. For this reason, the House of China flags our own flag. We do not fly nation flag. Let me turn to 1970 specifically. From 1935 to 1970, the Hall of China was operated by CCVA. In 1970, the international cottages were incorporated under the state of California. As such, the Hall of China became independent of CCVA, but of course we maintained a very close relation. So now we come to the more modern era and what I'm going to say proud time. The House of China is a unique Chinese organization as compared to many other local organizations, in that the House of China has an external folder, and of course we are guests of the city of San Diego and are located in Balboa Park. So we have greeted probably hundreds of thousands of local people, regional people, and international guests to our cultural open house. The House of China, I think now is kind of hailed for conducting 25 years of the youth essay contest of the local Chinese heritage school. There will be a picture of that later on. So we figure about 2,000 youngsters have entered and received, thousands of dollars in cash prize. The House of China is and has been a bridge to the mainstream community, and we actually helped blaze the way for the pandas coming to San Diego. So we have the next slide. Oh, well, this one seems to be maybe a little out of the side there. So, my mistake. So these were some of the active members at some kind of gathering at the House of China. This is on the street side of the building. You can see, because of historic ties, it has the Republic of China sign painted on the wall itself. Why don't we go to the next slide? Okay. So this is the one where I'm saying the House of China helped to blaze the trail for the coming of the pandas. So first, in, we believe, 1985, Wusu attained the golden month, and so these are some of the organizers that laid the way for the future. So the lady holding the panda bear toy is my cousin Virginia Ha. Some of the community members that also were involved, I believe that Sally Wong Avery, Susan Liu, there's Dinah Margaret Chu. I can't remember her name. She was a TV newscaster, and Gil on. So of course, when the pandas did come to San Diego, we celebrated along with everyone and provided hospitality with dinners and just helping out the China panda people with odds and ends. Also at this time, we have the House of China dancers that performed at student fairs like County, as good citizens today. We were involved as a partner in the U.S. Census and have been partners with the registrar of voters. As the Chinese community became more and more diverse, with arrival students from Taiwan, refugees from Southeast Asia, and mainland Chinese scholars and students, we were able to bridge the different Chinese groups. For instance, we took great pride in participating in the Unified Toy District Big Bay Balloon Parade. We had contingents from ACCEF, American Chinese Cultural Education Foundation, Northern Mainland Chinese, San Diego Chinese Women's Association, North American Born Chinese Women, CCDA, of course, the Indo-Chinese Association, Families with Children from China. So we all got together that year and the following year. When we go to the next page, next picture, so this is what I was saying. We were engaged in different activities, dances, programs. So this 1985 side picture shows some people, using the computer, how to type Chinese characters. We often invite the CCDA line group to perform. And again, you can see on the drum, because again, in the early San Diego Chinese group, they have Sanja, who was from San Diego, Vietnam. Let's go to the next picture. So as I was saying, we've received many, many recognitions over the years. And so the top left picture is Asian Heritage Award. The picture on the right, we were the first Chinese community partner to Barnard Asian Pacific Language Academy. We really have.
Excuse me, David.
Yeah.
I guess a lot of us are hearing this in and out the audio. I'm not sure, maybe, I don't know what we can do. Maybe your Wi-Fi is not very stable, or it's just somehow your connection. I'm not sure. Anybody can suggest something? If his Wi-Fi is not stable, there's not much we can do. I think we're almost finished, so we just
yeah. Well, hopefully
yeah, it's almost finished.
Yeah. So on the bottom picture, we've held many, many Chinese New Year celebrations, bringing both the mainstream community and the Chinese community together. This is the dinner with Supervisor Ron Roberts at Jasmine Seafood Restaurant. So why don't we go to another picture? As I was saying, the House of China is noted for having sponsored essay contests for decades now, and Dr. Nancy Lowe, who's in the pink in the center, has been the chair. And why don't I then talk about this? So let me talk about the Centennial Balboa Park that took place in 2015. We celebrated the occasion by hosting Moon Festival in the Oregon Pavilion with our key partner, the San Diego State Chinese Cultural Association. We had 3 line dance groups, China and local musicians and dancers, glow sticks in the dark, and fireworks show that mirrored the 1935 China Day fireworks. The House of China has, so to speak, been in the lifeblood of my family now for 85 years. The House of China is a community-based organization with members and officers from mainland China, Taiwan, Southeast Asia, and of course American-born. It also consists of ethnic Chinese, Anglos, Vietnamese, and Koreans. So the House of China is a non-profit, tax-exempt organization. No governmental funds have ever been received. We rely upon volunteers and generous donors along with fundraisers. Our website is houseofchinasd.com. Our mission remains to serve, present, and promote Chinese culture and friendship. I can be contacted at email at Seid, SEID 1950 HENWING@gmail.com. So we're also pleased to announce that we continue to promote, preserve, and present Chinese culture and friendship. So next Saturday, along with San Diego State University Chinese Center, we have a live Zoom virtual Moon Festival with Dr. Lily Chen narrating. We have Southern Seid, Lions dance, talking about lions, and segment of them doing the zone dancing. And we have cooking demo of mooncakes in China. We have both local as well as overseas entertainer. Afterwards, it will also be posted on YouTube. So please enjoy, and again, thank you for your time. And if you have questions, I'll try to answer your questions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. But I think I'm going to unmute people, and we'll see if we can have some conversation. I don't see. Okay, I think you guys are unmuted. If you want to speak, please do. If you don't, mute yourself, please. We welcome your discussion. But you know, nobody. Oh yeah, okay, Paul. I see the blue hand. Paul, please.
Yeah, hi, David. I'm curious. You mentioned the part that somewhere I might have got confused that a lot of San Diego came from Toisan area in China. Is that what?
Yeah. Correct. Correct. Because just the, there is the Chinese cemetery at Mount Hope. So if you look at the markers, so many of them will put down that their origin is from Taiping or Kaiping.
Hi, I have some questions. Hi, David.
Yeah.
Earlier you were mentioning Chinese community school and Chinese mission school in the middle 80s. Are those two schools the same or different? That's one question. Another one is when were those two schools stopped?
Well, it seems like some of the early schools began in the 1930s, and for whatever reason, they disappeared. I started going to the Chinese school in the late 50s when it was at the Chinese church on First Avenue, when the church was under construction to move to 47th Street. This congregational church basement was from there. It moved to the Benevolent. Then I think it disappeared again. And then Dr. Irene Chang founded.
Yeah, right. I remember that. Yes.
And then Sally Wong at that time, I think, was the last principal. So then that disappeared. Yeah. And then Chinese school kind of carried the mantle. And of course, there's so many more Chinese schools now. So there was never a continuous school. But I think there's been Chinese language instruction in San Diego for at least 80 years.
Yeah.
I guess.
Thank you.
I'm requesting people making noise, mute yourself. Somebody seems to be doing a lot of dishes or silverware, a lot of noise. Please mute yourself so we can hear the speaker, whoever asks questions. So if you like to speak, yeah, okay, it looks like Timon.
Yeah, we heard about Wong Chi Chong being an important merchant in San Diego with Ah Quinn. Did he have any ties to the House of China?
You were saying, you've heard stories about Wu Chi Chong and you heard about Ha Quinn, and you're asking, are those parties connected in some way?
The House of China?
Well, I think because the community was so small that people mutually supported or joined in activities. So for Ham Ah Quinn, he actually was killed in an auto accident before the House of China was formed itself. For the Wu Chi Chong family, they of course have been sponsors of so many different Chinese New Year celebrations and activities, including the House of China. And I must say, in the mail was a donation to the House of China a couple of days ago from the Wu Chi Chong family, and they also have pictures of when they attended a Chinese school. So a lot of cross activities took place.
Any other comments? I guess
I have just one question. Maybe you have mentioned, in one of your slides, you had the American flag, another flag, and you mentioned another flag. Could you repeat again? What is another flag? Remember, there's an American flag.
It's the 5-stripe early republic. I guess like David was saying, the early revolutionary flag. 5 stripes represent the 5 major ethnic.
Yeah,
Han Man Nong Hui. 汉满蒙回藏. That's the early
汉满蒙回
Chinese
藏.
flag.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
The
Yeah.
5 ethnic groups.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
May I make a comment for a moment? Can you
Sure,
hear?
yes.
David, you mentioned something about 1885. The Chinese Exclusion Act. When the Chinese Exclusion Act was passed by Congress, that was the first and only ever by the government of the United States designate a particular ethnic group as
Not eligible.
Yeah, that's not eligible to come to America. Well, it was a 10-year act, 1885. Well, the reason for that act was because it was sponsored by the laboring group in America, because the Chinese worked harder, longer, and cheaper, and it took a lot of work away from the labor unions. So anyway, it was a 10-year act. After 10 years came up, they renewed it for another 10 years. After that 10-year came up, they renewed it again for another 10 years. And they came up again, they renewed that act continually. The only ones that can come to America from China were the people that might have a business here, relationship to a business, or a student going to college. So anyway, that thing was extended 6 times, not until 1943. After six extensions, when World War II, China was on the side of the United States. So that act was eliminated. So I just want to tell you that continually, that was a very long time exclusion. So I just want to share that.
Well, that's
Thank
very
you.
valuable to know
Yeah.
all the extension that took place.
Yes, thank you, Tom. Yeah, that is a major part of our story, and it will be in our exhibition for this new display for the museum. Yeah, that's a very important part.
Just a side note, I guess after the last extension expired, we were already into World War II and China was an ally. That was the only reason that my father, who came from China as the infant, was able to become a U.S. citizen. So again, I gotta claim, my father was the first native Chinese to become a U.S. citizen in San Diego in maybe like 1942, 1943.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for the presentation. And
Sure thing.
I learned so much for San Diego specific, because I read some books like Lisa Seid's books and all that, like Shanghai Girls touched a lot about Second World War, what happened to Chinese people. So big books, but your presentation is so informative and very well presented. Thank you so much, and thank you for organizing it, San Diego Chinese Historical Society. And ladies.
Any other comments or questions?
Can I just share something about the family? It came to a point after my dad passed away in 1947. I know, sorry, 1943. So anyway, the children, the brothers, and so forth, we ran the business. And so 1957, we lived in Logan Heights, an area, one of the, place, only raised enough money to buy a house. So we had a Caucasian look for a house for us. So he came back after several weeks. He said, Tom, I'm sorry, we're having a problem because there's the grant deed, and 85% of the properties in San Diego have Exclusion Act. Exclusion Acts were meaning that only whites can own the 85%. That was in the grant. And so since we're not Caucasian, naturally couldn't do that. So anyway, he said, try and try. The doctor said, I would try and find something for your family. You know, we had 12 children in the family and mother. And so we needed a big, so finally he came to a house up there near North Park, blocking from Balboa Park. It was a 3-story house, and it was vacant for many years. Paints were peeling, landscape was not taken care of, it was empty.
Tom, excuse me, I'm gonna mute everybody and then unmute you because this big noise somebody's making in the kitchen is quite disturbing. I'm gonna mute everybody and then I will unmute you, Tom, so we can continue. I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm gonna mute everybody.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna unmute David. Where did David go? And then unmute Tom, I guess Loretta. Okay, Loretta. Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Please, Tom. Thank you. Continue.
Okay. So that 3-story house. He showed that to my mother, and my mother said, "I want to buy this house." Then he said, "There's a deed on this, has a grant deed that say it's only for Caucasian minorities cannot buy the property." And then instead, he said, "You know, if people don't complain, if they do complain, they have to take it to court. But maybe the neighbors may not care." Then my mother said, "I would like to find out." So she took my young brother, Paul, in her arm and walked the neighborhood, knocking on every door around 3-block circle and said, "There is an old house that is run down. We like to buy it. I have children. We will take care of it. And they're good children." So, you know, we did buy that house after all these years, had the Exclusion Act. But anyway, when I got in politics, I got involved with it. And we passed a resolution in the state of California, I was a state assemblyman there, to outlaw, you know, through the Supreme Court of this act about Exclusion Act laws on properties. So anyway, different states have done, and then it went to Supreme Court in 1960, something like that. They had Exclusion Act wiped out. So today, the Exclusion Act, if you look at some of the very old houses with a deed, you will find that Exclusion Act in there.
Deed restriction.
I mean deed restriction. So anyway, I just want to share that with you, that you know, the minorities had to let's say work together to eliminate some of these the kind of acts that you know, we talk about America being a great country, and it is a great country, but the minorities need to do this in order to make it even greater. Okay, I just want to share that with you.
Thank you so much, Tom, to share with us your personal experience. And that's why we want to celebrate Chinese American history. People struggled, sustained, and make it easier for us now. Yeah, and minorities definitely have to stick together and speak up. So, and that's why we have a much better society now, and we're still continue working that. So thank you